All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and put the slides in the chat if you haven't seen them. Sometimes it's easier to look at the data and a lot of the information on your own instead of on our little screen. I'm Travis. I know everybody on here. So this is awesome. We'll go ahead and just get started. You all know the drill for goals and guardrails. This is our opportunity to dive a little bit deeper than we're able to do at the board meeting, as well as give the community a little bit more awareness of what's happening around some of the goals and guardrails, but also an opportunity to ask questions and give feedback. And we've had some really good conversations each month. So here's a reminder of our goals and guardrails. Our 4 goals focused on student outcomes, and then our guardrails with a lot about our adult behaviors. And so what we'll do today, we're going to focus on goal 4, which is college and career readiness, but it's such a big goal that we've broken it into little chunks. And so the specific chunk we're going to focus on today is, I believe is 4.2, which is about AP and advanced placement and international baccalaureate enrollment and passing, and either Dr. O'Brien or Mr. Awesome will walk us through some of that data. And then we have Dr. Freeman here to walk us through some of the strategies that the district is doing to help support improvement on that goal. And so with that, let's jump straight into kind of at a high level, the board goal 4 data and status, and then we'll jump into the specific interim goals that we are looking at. So either Monique or Joe.
Awesome. So I can go ahead and get us started. So good afternoon, everyone. So for today, we'll be looking at goal 4. So this is a part 2 of what we started a couple months ago. And so with goal 4, it's around college and career readiness. And so you can see from the chart that's here, we're looking at the percent of high school students scoring at the college and career readiness level. And we define a student meeting a college and career readiness by meeting one of 8 buckets. And so that can be that the student has passed a career pathway assessment. The student could have passed 2 international baccalaureate assessments. The student could have passed 2 advanced placement assessments. The student could have earned at least 1 dual enrollment credit. The student could have met the ACT or SAT college and career readiness benchmark. The student could have earned credit through a work-based learning program. Or lastly, the student could have entered a technical college system of Georgia or University Systems of Georgia school without needing remediation in their ELA or math course that first year of college. And so from here, you can see that in 2019, we had 51.5% of our students, or 12th grade students, meeting the college and career readiness benchmark. For school year 2022, we had 37.1%. So the school year 2018-19 data is there to just kind of give you a frame of reference of where we were before the pandemic. In school year 2023, our board did adopt for us to move our baseline to the 21-22 school year. And so again, we're starting our conversation with that, where we are from school year 2022, 37.1%. And as of right now, since that is our baseline, our board status is to be determined. We will get the 22-23 school year data this fall. So it is a year lagging. And that's just because we need our students or 12th grade students to enroll in college, complete a full year of college to find out if they enrolled in a remediation course for ELA and math before we get that data from the Georgia Department of Education. Next slide. So now moving into our interim goal 4.2. So this is going to be where we focus the bulk of the conversation today. But interim goal 4.2 looks at the percentage of 9th grade students enrolled in an advanced placement course will increase from 17.8% in May 2022 to 21.8% in May 2024. So again, at the end of the 2022 school year, we had 17.8% of our 9th grade students enroll and pass an advanced place course. I should add that in there. During the 22-23 school year, so at the end of last school year, that number increased to 21.6%. So we are on track to meeting our overarching goal of 21.8% by the end of this school year. based on where we are at the end of last school year. Next slide. So then interim goal 4.2 now looks at 10th grade students. So now the focus is not only on students enrolling in an advanced placement course, but we're focused on, did the students actually pass the exam? And so for 10th grade or 4.2, we're looking at the percentage of 10th grade students who pass at least one advanced placement exam. And so to pass an advanced placement exam, a student will need a score of 3 or higher. And we want that number to increase from 50.5% in May 2022 to 54.5% in May 2024. So again, from looking at the chart here, we can see that 50.5% of 10th grade students had passed at least one advanced placement exam. They could have passed it in 9th grade or 10th grade, but by the end of 10th grade, they had passed at least one of those exams. At the end of last school year, so that would be 2022-23 school year, May of 23, we had an increase. So 52.8% of our 10th grade students have passed at least one AP exam. And so based on that information, again, we feel like we are on target or on track to be able to meet our goal of 54.5% at the end of this school year. And then 4.2C, I'm sorry, now looks at 11th grade students. So by the end of 11th grade, we're looking to see, have students passed at least one advanced placement exam? So again, that's a score of 3 or higher, or have the students pass at least one international baccalaureate exam. And so to pass an IB exam, a student would need a score of 4 or above. Just a side note, at the end of 11th grade, students that are in the IB program have had the opportunity to take at least one test. So again, that's why we're focused on at least one. And then lastly, students in 11th grade have the opportunity to take dual enrollment courses. And so we're looking to see, have they passed at least or earned credit in at least one dual enrollment course. And so to earn the college credit, the student would need a grade of 70 or higher in that course. And so again, our baseline for May 2022 was 59.6%. And our goal is by the end of May 2024, so the end of this school year, to have 63.6% of our students meeting one of those 3 areas. And so as you can see here, for this particular goal, again, May 2022, we started off with 59.6% of our students meeting at least one of those 3 categories, and they could have met that category during 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, depending on which bucket they fell in. And then last year, 11th grade students, we had 58.1% of those students actually end up meeting that particular target. So that is slightly lower than our target of 61.6%. And again, we're working towards and have strategies, and I'm sure Dr. Freeman will talk about some of those, but we do have some strategies in place to ensure that we're going the opposite direction. So we're going up to get closer to that 63.6% by the end of the school year.
Awesome. Thanks, Monique. I think Joe answered a question in the chat. Was this for high school students or seniors? And I think probably in reference to this overall board goal. And this is for all high school students, correct?
Yeah, the high school total experience of high school. But in the case of students not needing remediation in the technical system or the university system, those are former students in that sense. And that data is lagging by 2 years. So just to be clear on that, it takes a long time for our university system to get that data to the Georgia Department of Education. And then, of course, we get that information in the form of our college and career readiness performance index reports, which come in the fall of the school year. So we will get the 2024 CCRPI sometime in the fall. It'll in a gradual release starting in October. So.
Awesome. I have feel free to put in the chat or raise your hand if you have a question from the community while we wait for a minute on that. So that I can better understand this goal, it's specifically looking at 12th grade students for this goal, and then the interim goals are to help get you there. For the 12th graders, is it achieving one of the interim goals? So for example, if you enrolled and passed an AP course in 9th grade, is that the checkbox you need once you're a senior to be captured in here? Or is there a different checkbox once you're a senior?
Yeah, so it's a little bit slightly different of a checkbox. So essentially, we're looking at our seniors. So if you're looking at, let's take the 37.1%, that's actually going to be our class of 2022 students. And so we're looking at, for that class of 2022 students, while they were in high school. So it could have been in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, or 12th grade. And we can use advanced placement for an example. This one's going to be slightly different because we're looking to see that they pass 2 advanced placement courses. And so the way that we kind of set up the interim goals is that we're kind of cascading up. So we feel like in 9th grade, if you've enrolled in at least one advanced placement course, you're headed in the right direction. You've had that exposure, you've taken that rigorous course. By the end of 10th grade, we're hoping that you would have by now passed at least one advanced placement and test. And then, between the next 2 years, now you have the opportunity to hopefully pass that second one.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Thanks. Any other questions on some of the data? And also, I did want to confirm on this 9th grade one, it's 9th grade students enrolled and passed, like completed an AP class, or what's the data point on this one?
Yes. So that one we're looking at for 9th grade. So if you enrolled and passed that advanced placement course. So we're looking at their transcript at the end of 9th grade to see the number of students that actually not only enrolled, but passed the course.
Great. And I think we'll probably get to Dr. Freeman as well about what are those, what 9th grade opportunities do we have for students in AP that they have access to. Great. All right, let's move into, let's move into some of the strategies. So this is a lot of information. So I told Dr. Freeman she doesn't need to read the slide and it's in your PDF, but I don't know if you want to just touch on some of the strategies that we're leveraging to improve our numbers on particular to these interim goals, the 4.2 interim goals.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll start with funding. I think that's a priority as a strategy for us because we did start this goal with data that showed us that not all students had anything to contribute as a baseline to improvement unless it was something that they pursued on their own. And so we have prioritized funding for all of the exams, even importantly, PSAT for our 8th graders and pre-ACT for our 9th graders so that they have a baseline of performance. There's so many resources, both free and, what we procure that kind of allow students to start from somewhere, understanding what their areas of improvement are. And it's kind of a little too late if the first time they take the assessment in the 11th grade is the only amount of growth they have to achieve by the time they start to apply. So that was definitely a priority area for us. Another thing we acknowledged with SAT and ACT was that although we provide fee waivers for students, there are still some other significant barriers that keep them from participating in the exams on the weekends. And whether that's transportation or just work responsibilities, they're, in the 11th grade by that time. And so the SAT and ACT school days allow us to test the students in a familiar environment. And it gets the same level of credit and acknowledgement as it would on the weekend. So since certainly a priority for funding, and we're comfortable with those barriers being removed from students, and that kind of gets everybody on the same level playing ground to start with. Some alternative measures. One thing we noticed with this board goal and earlier with CCRPI, it's a bit different because there's multiple indicators. When we identified some of those indicators for our board goal, we acknowledge that there are quite a few students that may not even be in these categories that will ever fit in these buckets if their goal is not necessarily to pursue on to college, or if they're not heavily involved in CTAE, because the CTAE and work-based learning are kind of connected. And so what we're hoping we can get some leverage with our board with is to identify some alternative measures that maybe aren't in the CCRPI, perhaps non-traditional, that would capture some more students that aren't currently there. So we're looking at our JROTC completers, specifically how any student performs on the ASVAB. The Department of Education has specific requirements on diploma seals, and you can earn them for biliteracy or international skills or even fine arts. And they have very specific criteria that our district adheres to in order to assign the diploma seals or for students to earn them. And so we acknowledge those as credible reasons why we can deem our students college and career ready. So we're hoping in future board meetings, or specifically the board retreat, that we can kind of dive into those a little bit and see if there's other ways that we can connect with some students that aren't currently being identified. Dual enrollment is actually one of the ones I believe we've talked about in the previous board goal presentations, but just the opportunity for students to participate in dual enrollment, both on the technical college and in the university system. And so we took a hit during COVID and during the non-traditional era of virtual instruction and things like that. But we're hoping that now that we're really out of that, in a sense, that our students will return back to dual enrollment as an option. And it really gives us an opportunity to allow students to pursue the areas that are of interest to them, right? And to actually receive credit for it. So our dual enrollment efforts are picking back up for sure. Access to Atlanta Virtual Academy and Atlanta College and Career Academy, just the sheer nature of the structure of those programs allows for it to be an expansion beyond what the schools are able to offer. So if students are capable of performing well virtually or do have room in their schedule to devote some time to the College and Career Academy, they can get exposure to some courses that may not be readily available at their school. And so we're certainly exploring ways that we can make some more opportunities available to students there. I think there's one more slide for yeah, there we go. So some early identification, that's the big one, right? Once we get in high school, is it too late? That's that's the big question. And so just what can we do earlier to be able to identify students for these advanced courses? We know that they are very much more prevalent in the 11th and 12th grade. So that gives us a sweet spot of readiness and preparation from 8th to 10th grade. It kind of is done in naturally when you're at IB school, because you have the MYP program that kind of serves as a transition for some students that are interested in the diploma program or career related program. But for AP, there's opportunities also. We consulted with the College Board and learned that there are certain courses that are recommended based on the content covered and the other content knowledge that they have access to, and that are aligned with their courses. And so we learned that human geography is the primary course that is identified for 9th grade. And so, Travis, if you don't mind to advance to this AP summary course, I apologize, I don't know this offhand. This human geography course, there it is, it's 9. 9 schools are currently offering human geography with the focus of exposing 9th grade students to that course. And then, of course, your performance there, it serves as kind of a baseline of readiness and exposure to the rigor of AP for other areas of interest. Thank you, Travis. So the early identification happens in those courses, but also there's a lot that we can glean from the PSAT and the pre-ACT as well, with the data reports that come from that. On the PSAT side, we get a report, it's called AP Potential, and it just basically says based on how the student performed in this course, there is a certain percentage of a chance that they would be successful in these other AP courses that the College Board offers. And so while we don't count that as the data source, it's more of a data source, and really trying to identify students for opportunities that they may not select on their own. And so two more things, cross-school collaboration. The idea there is just basically some schools have the structure and the teachers that are already trained. That could be the instructor for students that are outside of their school. And so with the technology advances and just the level of comfortability that we gained from virtual instruction, the idea that maybe sharing teachers between campuses could work. Sylvan and Sutton were our first group to kind of pilot that. We learned a lot from it, and our superintendent has kind of made a commitment for us to use what we learned from there and make some adjustments and make it available for more students going forward. So we will be exploring ways for that type of collaboration next school year. And then the last thing is building capacity, right? We want our counselors who really honestly serve as the primary source of consultation with students about what they're interested in, but what they've demonstrated aptitude in, giving them the opportunity to get as much professional learning as possible so that advisement carries on in the student's trajectory, even when they leave middle school onto high school. Our school administrators, letting them know all of the changes and the benefits of advanced courses, so that they can feel empowered to find ways to make it work in their master schedule and such. And then, of course, always our teachers, and making sure that they have opportunities for the AP training. One thing that I keep mentioning COVID, but one thing that we learned through that time is just, the teacher burnout and just how essential and important their time off was. And the AP training primarily takes place in the summer. So we're looking for ways to stipend our teachers, to embed some professional learning during the school year so that it's not a burden that they carry to cover these courses, that it is something that's along the lines of their own personal professional development as a professional educator. So those are the strategies, a quick summary of what we have that we're working towards. I think one other thing I failed to mention was the pre-AP courses that we are piloting in some of our schools. The idea there is that you take a basic 9th or 10th grade level class that the students are already taking. You take 1, 2, maybe 3 units of the course and teach it the AP way instead of the traditional way. So it's no different content. There's no different resources. It's just the idea that we kind of deliver the instruction in a way that they would see in an AP course. They don't have to take an exam. The idea is just that, it's like, oh, this all, okay, I got this. I can do this. I'll try it. And, especially if it's an area of interest. And so we're hoping to learn that it has equal benefit for the teachers feeling comfortable with the content as well as the students. And so this is our first year, much to be learned at the conclusion, that hopefully we can share in future meetings about just best practices and how that pilot turned out.
Awesome.
Yes.
And then
Oh,
this
yeah.
is a chart. Yep.
Yep, this is just a summary of where AP courses are being offered at each school. It also includes students that have access to an AP course from their home school. So for example, if I'm taking AP Psych course, I may be taking it virtually, but I'm at Washington, it still counts. So it's giving you an idea of where the courses, how they're kind of distributed. What we realize is what we've heard after presenting this information is that there's way more access to these AP courses than previously assumed. But it's also important when looking at this document to also consider the other advanced course opportunities that complement AP. So whereas BEST, it looks, oh, they only have 3, well, they have a significant amount of students that do dual enrollment, right? Or Mays and Thurl, for example, or specifically Thurl, they have an IB program and have to offer 15 different IB classes for those students. So this is just a third of the pie when we're talking about the advanced course options, but I hope you'll see that there's a significant distribution across all of our schools and what they have access to just in this category.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Freeman.
You are so
A few questions come in.
Okay.
One goes back to the exams. Do students have a choice between exploring between, I'm going to guess that's the ACT and PSAT exams in 8th grade? Maybe it's just how does that work? Is it optional to take them? Does everyone have access? Can you explain a little bit about that?
It's the
Absolutely.
ACCA program. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nicole.
it's kind of two separate things, really. The ACCA in the 8th grade, your main thing is just to kind of know that ACCA exists and what the opportunities are, so that when you get to scheduling in high school, you can be cognizant of what you need to take in order to allow enough time for the course, the courses that are there, because of course they're going to take the 2 classes in one block. The PSAT, we want all students. We are very, very intent on, 95% of students in the 8th grade taking the PSAT. I think that's kind of early to rule out college. It's kind of early to double down on any career or choice at that time. So having the PSAT scores, the areas of improvement, the resources that come from having taken the exam, we want that for all students. I think it's fair for all of the students to start high school knowing that this is how they performed, and then they have some type of springboard should their choices change at any point along the way.
Awesome. We'll go to Miss Dobbs, and then I'll get to Chandra's question in the chat. Miss Dobbs?
Okay.
Hey, I just had I was thinking those students that don't want to go to college,
Mm-hmm.
are they having to take the PSAT and all these tests as well?
They are expected to take the PSAT and
But why do I ask? Because they already are said that they don't want to attend college. So why are we putting them through that?
Well, the PSAT is in the 8th grade. So to that point, it may not be your first choice at this point, but I don't know that we want it to be no choice ever. And some students are reignited by what their potential it demonstrates when they take the PSAT. But there's a lot of instructional data that can come from the PSAT that could inform milestones or other course progressions in school. It might have a larger aptitude for science courses and be enrolled in some, more science than other electives. So it's a huge data set that comes from it. We don't connect PSAT to college. SAT,
Okay,
yes.
I understand that, but my thing is it's already enough tests for kids. Why not make it just an option? Make it clear that it's an option. You don't, but you're not required, because it's already a lot of assessments that you have to take already. That's adding more stress to a situation we don't even have, stable as yet.
Understood. Well, I mean, there's always an option to opt out if the parents feel strongly about their students not participating. And so that remains an option.
And that's very good feedback, because we do have that conversation about excessive testing and the impact on instructional time. So that's good feedback to hear. And that's something that we're going to constantly study and look at and find ways to improve it.
I appreciate it, because, working hand in hand with parents and speaking to a lot of them in APS, the testing is vigorous. And even with it, we're still not assuring that we're taking those tests and using them for the students. So adding another one required, it's not making sense to them, that's all. But if they have that option to opt out, okay, I understand.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ms. Dobbs. And that may also be a note for Mr. Austin or Dr. O'Brien to put in the link with the parent guide of assessments. Just I don't know if that helps or hurts the conversation to see all of the different assessments, but I do know that y'all just released that based on a lot of feedback that we hear in these monthly meetings as well. And so would love to share that if it is available to share. Staying on the PSAT, Dr. Freeman, what are some of the resources that come from taking the PSAT? And I'll probably add on top of it, and then to help support students before they go to take that PSAT.
So the preparation for the PSAT is really provided by the College Board in the form of like a practice test. They'll give you an idea of what areas will be tested and what to expect on the exam, but there's no preparation specifically for it. The report that comes from it, it gives you details, of course, with the areas that you excelled in, the areas of improvement, but it also gives you an idea of different scholarship and recognition opportunities that may come from the scores that have been earned. From a counseling perspective, of course, we talked about the AP potential report, getting an idea of the general areas of improvement of students may lead to some elective type courses that they may choose to offer to build up the skills that a majority of students may be deficient in or even excel in, right? So if I have students that continue to show exceptional scores in writing, then maybe I want some elective type English classes that will support their strengths or even their interests. And that could be available at the high school as well. And so those are just a few examples, but there's a couple websites and different things that I'll be happy to share if anyone's interested on like an example of the score report, example of what comes from it.
May I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
With all the tests that's coming out, are there any tutorials for the PSAT? Because I mean, you know, they're focused on their milestones and all this. With the testing, is there any training offered or for that for the student? Or are they just
Not
taking the test?
necessarily training, right? But the exposure to what would be on the test. So there is the practice test, and then there's some resources available in Khan Academy as well, which all of our students have access to in my backpack.
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's do I keep kicking you down the road, Chandra, but I'm going outside first. So Miss Howell, question or feedback?
Yes, I just wanted to know, just a simple question, may not be here, but how many of the students with disability have taken these tests and how many have been successful?
Great. And I don't know if our data team will likely and unlikely have that right in front of them, but we'll put it on the list to get back. Let's see. All right, now to Chandra's question about dual enrollment. Is there an opportunity or to provide dual enrollment at APS high school so students would have to travel to partner schools' campuses? So to remove the barrier of transportation or scheduling, is there an opportunity to expand dual enrollment at the home school?
Yeah, so several of our schools are exploring that. The only thing that comes with this is the expectation of enrollment, right? Naturally, the partner schools want a minimum number of students participating to provide an instructor in person. But also it kind of tugs a little bit at the different variety of courses that the students may have access to. They typically wouldn't send multiple, right? They'll send one for English or one for math. But when the student is enrolled in going to the partner site, they have a bigger plethora of of opportunities, excuse me. So that is the reality. But still, many of the schools are like, oh, we have 15 students. I'd much rather them stay than for them to travel. And they look for the schools that can accommodate in that way. And several are definitely exploring it. Now, what makes them choose and land on that as an option, I'm not really privy to that. I don't know what makes the school decide to move forward or not, but we do make sure they have the resources to explore it if they're interested.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Ms. Banks.
Hi, quick question. So with the data, it looks like a small percentage of students, like even with the AP data, are benefiting, I guess, from like taking PSATs or even in like graduation rates and just being on track for college and career readiness. What are we doing with the data for the other like 60% and other numbers of students that aren't, I guess, aren't college and career ready? Because that shows that only 37 are, I guess, are on track. And so what do we do with the other, what do we do with that data? Does APS have a way of tracking what we do with that data?
Yeah, so that's really where all the strategies come in, the alternative measures we're looking at for the students that, to someone else's point before, just not college bound. And some of these goals are really connected with that. We worked quite a bit last year with doing some professional development with our school-based leadership, the counselors, assistant principals, and principals, with identifying the students that are included, that are close, that are nowhere near, and being able to isolate that data to an actual student's name, so that they have been trained in the practices to be able to identify those students and exploring different things. It's in the school's continuous improvement plan, where they have to call out specific groups of students and their progress on each of these goals and what their local strategies are and the resources that they need to be able to achieve them. So to your point, it is a significant number of students that haven't, but sometimes the strategy for improvement is really to target the younger students, and then we don't see their data manifest until they become a senior.
And that
So it
was
is kind of looking at it on the long game.
And that was my next question, just my last one, because I won't take up too much time. Is it, how far back do you track those students? Do you just track, do you track from kindergarten what their progress were and their milestones, and well, MAP is fairly new, their other assessments? Do we track that data to see where they were performing at in third grade or in sixth grade or anything like that as well?
We haven't for this data specifically. It starts with their enrollment in ninth grade.
But the board's goals themselves are the continuum from kindergarten through past graduation. So the literacy and the numeracy, really some of the interim goals, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, data people, start at kind of kindergarten readiness, first grade, second grade, and then it jumps into milestones, third through eighth. Then it jumps into college career readiness, profile of a graduate for eighth and beyond. So it's supposed to paint a picture of the continuum of a student at APS. All right, let's see. Thanks. Monique put in some information, Ms. Howell, in the chat for you to take a look at. There's a question on dual enrollment courses. Can students take virtual dual enrollment courses? And if they do, does USG, University System of Georgia, accept transfer of the virtual dual enrollment?
So the students can take a virtual dual enrollment course if the course is offered virtually at the post-secondary partner, right? So they don't make it virtual for high school students, but if it starts off virtual, then our students can enroll in the course. As far as the acceptance of the transfer of virtual dual enrollment, I don't know this to be 100% true, but my first instinct is that yes, because they are following the guidelines of what's offered at the post-secondary institution. And so if they are offering it, I would like to believe they're not offering one that is less of credit or eligibility for transfer credit than an in-person course.
Yeah, and I'll have to, don't hold me to this. I literally heard yesterday that there was legislation about that some courses are not cannot be transferred if you take it at one college and then transfer to a different college and then back. And I believe there's legislation to try to ensure that everything is transferable. But I don't know where that is in the legislative process. I also heard concerns that some parents have that your grade follows you in dual enrollment. So if you take a dual enrollment class as a 9th or 10th grade or whatever the earliest you can and don't do so well, it's really hard to that grade follows you into the university system if you continue on to college. But these are all just things that people have to think about when taking some of these different courses. Let's see.
Because the other thing that follows you is your funding, right? And so being very specific about how you utilize, right, your hope dollars and your dual enrollment credit, and being successful in the course is the other part. We don't want to start off college with failures. So things like that is where I was saying that counselors really, really contribute to the overall experience.
And one thing, Dr. Freeman, that I forgot to put in the slides leading up were some of these AP awards, and we'll make sure to include this, but the state offers some awards for our schools that either increase access or see growth and things like that. And I'm not sure if I've seen a public kind of push out from the district on this, so I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but wanted to share that we're seeing a number of our schools with either increasing access for African-American Hispanic students, for Booker T. Washington, for schools with smaller schools who have a certain number of exams, growth and participation. You can see Mays called out here, all down into STEM and STEM achievement. So all of that is through the state, and hopefully we can push out more information celebrating those schools as well.
Absolutely.
All right, let me see if I missed any. Yep, the impact on Zell and Hope, like all of those are kind of pieces to the puzzle. And thanks, Diane. Diane is a dual enrollment expert on our team, so we appreciate that. Let's see, Ms. Banks, did you have another question, or is that the same hand up?
That's the same hand.
All right, appreciate it. All right, let me give me 1 second to pull up just some things on the radar for coming up for people who'd like to participate. Thank you, Dr. Freeman and Joe and Dr. O'Brien for walking us through College of Career Readiness. Actually, do Joe or Monique, do either of you know what the goal is for April?
Yes, in April, we'll be talking about profile of a graduate. So we'll be looking at, historically, we've looked at just that data for 12th grade students. So now we'll be looking at the cascade down for profile of a graduate for our middle and elementary school students.
Awesome. I should know that, shouldn't I? Okay. So just wanted to keep heads up to some of the upcoming engagements. Today we have just finished the annual summer experience expo. We had an in-person one, I believe it was last week, and had I feel like it was in a couple hundred range of people showing up, which is exciting. Tonight we were going to have a cluster advisory team meeting. This got scheduled because of the awesome Midtown Jackson basketball game this evening in Macon. And when put to a vote, the cluster team would rather go to the basketball game. I can't fault them for that. This evening, we also, you can join me over in the Douglas cluster at Woodson Park to start talking about some rezoning strategies to address overcrowding at KIPP Woodson Park. We have hiring events happening this weekend. The calendar survey is out. I see Tom was on here. The next week, number of things: special education advisory meeting, 3 cluster advisory meetings. We're going to do Douglas cluster rezoning conversations each week for the next 3 weeks. So feel free to join us there, as well as a parent expo for parents with students with disabilities on the 14th at Howard Middle School. I forgot, Katie Howard's meeting is also tomorrow at 11:30 if you'd like to join there. And then our students have some leaders symposium on the 15th. We have a brand new college and career event for Hispanic students on the 16th, more cluster advisory, more students with disability engagement, as well as SPLOST coming up. And then I'll just talk about the last few. National Single Parent Day is coming up on March 21st. A lot of activities going on around that for all the male guardians, parents, mentors out there who would like to join us for the next Man Up conference and want to hang out with me and some team members as we talk about some of those kind of professional learning. Join us on the 23rd at Farrell, and also a first with Dr. McKenzie's group, a World Language Day to discuss, to talk about multilingualism at CSK. We have tons of stuff in March, and I'm not even gonna go to the last week of March because there's just so many things. They're all on the district calendar, so please check them out for individual flyers and links and things like that. And I think that probably brought up some questions, so we'll go to Ms. Howe and then Ms. Banks as well.
Yes, to that calendar, are y'all about to start having the rezoning conversations again, or is it just certain ones, certain areas?
Yeah, so the only ones that came out of the annual report from facilities that are being recommended are in the Douglas cluster. And so we'll be doing those meetings each Thursday starting tonight. Then on the 14th, tonight's at Woodson Park. Then on the 14th is at John Lewis Invictus. And then the 21st will be virtual. Then they're going to look at 2 different scenarios. And then based on that feedback, we'll come back after spring break in April with one recommendation. And then we'll dive deeper into the community to get feedback on that one recommendation. And then depending on what happens there, it'll go to the board in May for first read.
This is, are all these options, will you record them and have them in the space? Okay, that's great. Now, let me ask this last question. For the most part, schools that are having challenges, especially when it comes to possibly needing to be rezoned, would be the Jackson Midtown cluster. Is Douglas having some overcrowded issues as well? Overcrowdedness?
Yeah, so Douglas cluster is the one that has the that our facilities team has determined has the biggest impact by looking on their projected enrollment over the next 5 years. Woodson Park is facing increased overcrowding each year for the next 5 years. It will continue to grow, whereas Midtown and Jackson, our demographers show either a peak in Midtown before coming down a little, and Jackson kind of hovering right around 100%. So they'll keep watch on them each year, but Woodson Park is the main one, or the only one we're reviewing right now for potential rezoning because of that growth.
Okay, right.
And then I'm gonna see if either Chandra or Diane's on here. Question about the Go Team Security Survey, and Go Team feedback related to the 45,000.
So I see the question asking when will the public be able to give feedback? Is that the question?
Yes.
So we can get with facilities and see. They gave the guidance specific to the Go teams. So Go teams will be
Go
having
teams should be discussing it
right by
March
March 29th.
By March 29th. So they should be either discussing it with their communities. Community members should reach out to their Go team members to share their feedback on what to do with that grant before
Correct. It should be on the agenda for your team's upcoming budget approval meeting.
Gotcha. So when it's on an agenda, a public member should sign up for public comment or submit their feedback as if it's an agenda item, like other agenda items.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Miss Banks and then Miss Alderi.
I just wanted to add to the calendar, or maybe if it's changed, let me know. I think the Gifted Education is having something on March 9th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. It says at Coretta Scott King's Women's Leadership Academy. Because I know once they said last month was Gifted Education, now it's this month. I don't know, but this is the only event I've seen for Gifted Education. So I did want to add that or ask if there was any others. Since this seemed to get left off the engagement list.
Thanks for the heads up. It takes a village to keep up with the engagement.
All the events,
so I appreciate it, Ms. Banks, and I will reach out to Dr. Arnold and others to see, or Mona Haygood to see what they've got going on. Thank you. Deanna.
Thank you.
Hi, one comment, one question, just to follow up on that Go Team security, whatever was pushed out. Unfortunately, at our elementary school, we weren't given a heads up about that item. I believe it was added onto the agenda and not presented to the public prior to. So they appeared to rank them during the meeting, but the public comments is after they ranked them. So you could tell that Go Team members were a little bit unclear. I had a couple Go Team members reach out to me. So I think we should, regarding security and schools, involve the community more in a structured way. If we're going to ask Go Team feedback, and Go Team is supposed to be representative of the community. So that is going to be my advice there. And feedback. And then the other one, just to go off of Waikisha's question regarding Midtown, you mentioned a peak that appears to be rolling through Midtown, but then dropping. In fact, the classes that you guys have said, the class cohorts that you guys have said are going to drop, were the largest kindergarten cohorts we've ever had in APS. When you look at the kindergarten class, actually dropped out during COVID, and it looks like we had a bunch of others drop out when they were rolling into Howard, because we had some major challenges over the last 3 years, not this year, with leadership. So I think we need a plan, and some of us have asked for this. If you don't see what you need to see next year, and you see that those people are in fact coming back to Midtown, when are we going to address the redistricting? Because the false narrative put out there that this is a smaller cohort or a smaller, less births is just inaccurate. If you look at the actual data, these were the largest kindergarten classes our Midtown cluster has ever had.
Thanks for sharing, Dion. I lean on our demographers for calculating the data and the projections, and I believe the same concerns that you have been brought up to Kavi and Bonnie and their team about the bubble and the classes and the impact of Howard, principal turnover and things like that. And so I lean on them to do the projections that comes now. But yes, it'll be tracked each year as part of the annual report. And just like last year, if things change based on the enrollment projections and, business or permits, building permits and things like that, then that's when a recommendation may or may not come for rezoning. So that's kind of
I just know when I presented that to a couple leaders, they had no clue that in fact those cohorts were the largest kindergarten classes. So they had never heard that. I think there should be more conversation about that. And also, when are we going to keep saying that this peak, we're just at the peak, or we're just at the peak? It's very frustrating. And also knowing, the soonest when a change could possibly be made with the current policies.
Yeah, I'll make sure Kavi is aware of the kindergarten feedback. I'll see him tonight for Woodson Park and let him know that. Just so y'all know, the timeline is we rezone the runway that was referenced. We don't rezone right before the school year. We wait one full school year. So any rezoning that is recommended in the spring takes place the following year. So anything happening this spring would take place 25-26, which is the peak year that our demographers have shared at Midtown, is that 25-26. But like I shared, it's changes all the time. And so that's what they're tracking. And then I think I saw another one about not clear. Yeah, and Diane's a legislative expert, so maybe she can let me know, but I don't know if that $45,000, I think is part of the state budget that would have to be approved. And so this is in preparation for if it's approved so that the schools could be ready to go ahead of time once, fingers crossed, it is approved. All right, with that,
Travis,
Dia,
I'm not
another
sure
question?
if, I'm sorry, Travis, I'm not sure if Miss Eldiri raised her hand again or if
Yeah,
it's.
I see it.
Okay.
I do have a question. One of the innovative models to address the overcrowding was to reduce the number of AP offerings, which goes in contrast to some of these goals and guardrails. So how are you ensuring that the AP offerings for schools that have overcrowding, which you would assume are more because there's more children, how do you ensure that those are not being taken away from overcrowded schools?
Yeah, so the discussion with the number of AP courses is just presenting the opportunity for dual enrollment as an alternative. So it's not to remove the opportunity for advanced courses in those areas. It's just an alternative way to receive the credit. And that's the conversation at this point is about expanding dual enrollment for those areas.
No, there were conversations about removing AP classes in the last year and a half to accommodate the overcrowding at Midtown. And so it's a little bit, when you listen to the board meeting, it's in contradiction of what as parents in Midtown are hearing. Because if you remove the AP classes and there's not classes for the kids to take, then they're forced to have to look at other options in dual enrollment. So parents are feeling that they are being forced. The other conversation that's happening or potentially being discussed is that there will be a cap on AP classes. Again, which contradicts some of these items, which we may have more offerings than other schools, but we are also an over-enrolled school. So I think these are some conversations that, seem to contradict each other.
Yeah, I can see how it sounds that way. And I mean, for us, when we talk about advanced coursework, we're always looking at those 3 different opportunities, not necessarily as equal, but all as an opportunity for advanced coursework. And so in any conversation that I've been a part of, it has been still giving the students that have the aptitude and interest in an advanced course in that area. The alternative to taking it physically at Midtown is to take it through dual enrollment. But if that's not the message that you're receiving, then that's definitely something that we want to address to ensure that that's articulated the right way.
Because our
And just
message,
to-
Yes, and I believe that parents want their children to go to Midtown and not be pushed out and forced to go to college prior to them being a senior or graduating from being a senior. So again, being districted to a public high school and attending school from 8:45 to 3:45 is different than being forced to push out and figure out how to get to a dual enrollment course, of which I believe yesterday you said there's some transportation issues with as well. And we're trying to figure that out. So again, pushing kids out of school, out of their local public school to address overcrowding should not be the answer.
We appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation specific around AP courses. The conversations are happening at a school level. From my understanding, nothing has been decided about anything at any point. I think there's probably a lot more research that needs to be done, as well as if there's 28 courses, AP courses at Midtown, how many students are in each course by what semester and in each space, and a much more detailed overview. So I look forward to kind of those conversations and hearing updates on what recommendations actually come out of it, rather than we like to keep all options as part of the conversation, right? As part of design thinking, as part of looking at innovation, is putting everything on the table and then talking about what is or isn't feasible or desirable by the school. So hopefully that process can work itself out and then determine what is feasible or desirable or meaningful. So hopefully those will be the next steps. So with that, I appreciate everybody's time. It's 1:01. Thanks for the extra minute. And we'll see y'all next month. I think the board meeting is on a Tuesday next month, if I'm not mistaken, after spring break, but I'll have to look. But we'll keep our Thursday after the board meeting for Profile of a Graduate conversations. So y'all have a great Tuesday. Yep. So y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next month. Thanks.
Thank you.